Hello, everyone. I'm David Younger,
Hi, I'm Elvin Aydin-Keles.
and we created Chronic Illness Therapy to provide support and resources for people living with chronic health conditions. Both of us had experiences over the weekend in respective meetings that we were at about how difficult it is for people to talk about their feelings and with respect to their illness and what they're going through. I was at a local meeting for the FSH Society, which is the type of muscular dystrophy that I have, and you were at a cancer meeting. And I mean, first of all, I'll can start off just saying a bit about, it was about 20 people there with families and couples and siblings, different. So there were caregivers there and people with the disease, and just going in, the energy was so dense. And I went with Deb, and we had volunteered to bring drinks and snacks. And Debbie, as you know, is she's got a lot of energy, and so like she could, and she's also very perceptive. So we would go in, and we could see, wow, like this is just dense. And she was going around offering people uh, snacks and something to drink, and she said to me afterwards, she's like, I should have said, would you like an antidepressant cookie? Because it really felt quite heavy. And one person in the meeting started talking about something her adult child who has the disease as well is trying to have a kid, and she was getting, tearful, and it was clearly really hard for her to talk about. And then the person who was running the meeting just kind of switched the subject.
How
And
interesting.
yeah, I sort of brought it back by saying, I understand what you're going through. We've been through something similar, and it's so difficult. And there were a number of people in the meeting who had kids who had kids with the disease, or kids trying to have their own kids, or they themselves were trying to have their own kids. So it was a universal topic. Yet clearly there was just I feel like so much of the heaviness was about an avoidance. And I know the avoidance is complicated. It's like there's a desire to talk about these things, there's a fear, um, you know, there's not knowing if this is the right place to talk about it or not. But it just felt so clear how needed it was just to have that space to just talk about.
So what happened in the end? Did you end up talking about it or not?
A bit, but not. But there was an agenda for the meeting to talk about what was going on with the research, to talk about establishing a local chapter. There was a guest speaker, so it wasn't, it wasn't this sort of free flowing meeting where. But at the same time, we could have stayed with her and the experience, and for even 5 or 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That's kind of what I tried to do by bringing it back to what she was talking about, letting her know I understood and how difficult it was.
Yeah, I understand. Yeah, it's shocking. Like people immediately try to move on to a safer topic, like things to do, or easier things to discuss. I had a similar experience this weekend at this conference, which was really well managed actually, and everything was going well. But people focus on what to do, and A, B, C, D, F things. Life is never as simple as that, and there's a lot of vagueness and a lot of ambivalence and a lot of mixed feelings and a lot of dread about death in the room. And I wonder how we can address them in these kind of public meetings,
Mm.
or what to expect. I mean, how to talk about feelings. Really, it's so difficult.
It is. It's so difficult and so needed. I mean, I could see that some people could feel where people were desperate to want to connect and talk
Mm,
about it.
mm,
But there's also just such a fear. It's almost like one of the things I feel was that there's this fear of naming
mm,
it, and even so, there's this simultaneous desire to connect and talk about it because people are so lonely with it, and no one else understands what they're going
mm,
through. But then there's this fear of naming it and talking about it, maybe
mm,
because it will make it more real, because they're just used to containing and compartmentalizing, and
mm,
there's a fear of falling apart.
mm. I was gonna say, what is it that you think that people were so afraid to name?
Well, some people are afraid. I noticed that there's a common theme of people not getting tested or having their kids tested because even though they see, that there are
The
symptoms,
signs. Mm,
that there are signs, there's just such a fear of it being, so they know deep down, like they have it, but there's just such a fear of that confirmation. Um, and so part of it is just like an, a deep existential fear of like integrating this into, this is my reality. uh,
oh,
and if I don't get that diagnosis, then I don't have to fully accept that.
I hear you. And it's very similar, I believe, what cancer patients are going through in, you know, to avoid talking about death. It's almost like if I say it, it's going to become my reality. It's going to happen quicker, or I will hasten it, um, which is, of course, not the truth. And it's so important to be able to talk about it whenever, as opposed to trying to avoid it. Um, it's just, it's one of those things when you don't have a right or wrong. And it's so hard. And you and I, um, we know about mentalization, and we know about a healthy ambivalence, what it looks like and how it feels like. And this is such an important quality. That's why I'm very passionate about teaching about these things. And I really think that just by teaching the aspects of high mentalization, I think we can bring a lot of awareness to people. So that's why I love doing these discussions with you, because it's so important to give this message out there. It's actually not that difficult, you know. So as I remember, the four main pillars of high mentalization, which is being reflective about things, having a healthy sense of self, being aware of things, all sorts of things are under high mentalization. So it's about being aware of your thinking and being aware of the limitations of your thinking, how clear you are, how unsure you are, what your expectancies are, and then being able to talk about, about your feelings and relating it to your history, like to your family, and also being aware of the feelings and the thoughts of the other person that is in front of you. Like, this may be too much for you to hear, or I understand this is a little heavy, or is this scary for you, to just, just, and and please, if I miss something, I mean, I remember another important thing being having the giving the benefit of the doubt to the other person, and not just um, assuming things on the based on how things look like. For example, if somebody's face is upset, oh, he or she must hate me, instead of that saying maybe they had a bad day. But it's just so important to not assume, and to say, this is my reality, this is how I feel, and I really understand if you don't come from that perspective, this is where I am. So creating that space in the middle where we can bring our realities and create this intersubjective world.
yes, and the interesting thing about these meetings is that people are not coming. So I'm used to people coming for therapy who at least are in this process of recognizing I'm struggling with this. I want to talk about it, or I need to talk about it. I need to deal with it differently. And they're coming with that express purpose.
Yeah.
In these meetings, you're dealing with people who are oftentimes dealing with people who are heavily defended, who are not ready to talk about things. And it's just a lot more raw and unprocessed. So it's a and that's where the density comes in, because uh, there's just there's not even there's no recognition of, oh my God, I'm struggling with this. I really need to talk about it. I really want to talk about it.
And
The
the not
defense are a lot.
okayness of talking about it, right? Like the
Right,
fear of what will happen if I do. Will I upset everyone? Will the floodgates open? Will this
right,
be the end of my relationship? All those kind of
right,
feelings, and the shame that will come after disclosing that, and
right.
the absolute need inside, like to say something about it and just to be recognized and acknowledged.
And unfortunately, what I would love for people to realize is that it takes so much more energy to repress and compartmentalize and not deal with things, because they don't just go away. They're there, and they're they're utilizing so much of their energy, their mental emotional energy, on repressing these things. And
Absolutely.
even
Yeah.
if you start to talk about it and cry for an entire week, the tears will stop.
Yeah.
And actually the barriers are go down, and there's a lot more flow, and it becomes a lot less scary
Yeah.
to talk about things, and you don't need that energy to keep those blockages up.
Mm. I completely agree with you. And even if you're dealing with, let's say, as we discussed before, metastatic cancer, and your fear is death, of course, and it will happen. And maybe it will happen sooner than later, or later than sooner. We don't know. And just, we will have those days where we cannot just walk past that feeling or the dread of death. And it's absolutely okay to say that, even if we really go down to the deep dark place in us. Once we go through that, the next day we may come up feeling much lighter, and the day may seem better and different. So to not be afraid of these ups and downs, and just surfing them, if you like, is the way to go through.
Yeah, and especially if someone has the courage to say, to talk about their fear of dying, and someone else is there who says, I feel similarly, and shares that, then all of a sudden you have this profound experience of not being alone. It's like the antidote to shame, is being able to talk about these most difficult things, and being joined in that way.
Yeah. As Yala once said, the only antidote of death is walking alongside of the person who's dying. So
Mm,
the only thing we can do for each other is to be there in that very lonely path. It's so important to remember that you will definitely feel more okay once you talk about these things
mm.
that burden your heart.
Okay, well, that's a really important topic that we'll continue discussing. And thank you for joining us. And if this was helpful, please like and share and subscribe to get updates, and check out chronicillnesstherapy.com and the Chronic Illness Therapy Facebook page.
Please write to us if you have any comments and questions.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much.